he said it's no good alone. I think I need a family and a home to share the things I'm feeling inside my heart. I need someone to be a child, a companion to me. I want him to look as I do, so I think that I'll have to make two who will be to each other an answer to this longing in the soul, for the half who will make life whole. Through each other they'll understand how to give and receive all they can, until one special day when love will bring them young, and through children of their own they will understand my soul. And I'm going to live in their hearts. That's the home I'm going to be welcome in. No cathedrals musty and dark, but a world where we'll share our lives as kin. And in their image I'll form all creatures and worlds yet unborn, but as fine and as vast as these things shall be, I have but one end in mind: the joy that we're going to find. And I'm going and will live in each other's hearts. That's the home we're going to be welcome in. No cathedrals musty and dark, but a world where we'll share our lives as kin. Yes, I'm going to live in their hearts. Yes, I'm going to live in their hearts. How I long to live in their hearts.
Hello. Today's reading is from Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. The exposition of the divine principle, chapter 1, section 2.3.4. The mode of existence of the four-position foundation. Had Adam and Eve moved together in harmony and attained oneness, the whole cosmos with its dual characteristics would have danced in harmony. The place where Adam and Eve became perfectly one in heart and body as husband and wife is also the place where God and human beings became united. This is the center of goodness, where the purpose of creation is fulfilled. Here, God, our parent, draws near and abides within his perfected children and rest peacefully for eternity. The center of goodness is where God can be stimulated with joy for eternity. This is the place where the Word of God is incarnated and brought to fulfillment. It is the center of the truth and the center of the original mind, which guides us to pursue the purpose of creation. Adieu.
I've been thinking a lot about the blessing lately. I went to the 7-day Japanese workshop, Japanese Divine Principle workshop in January that the Kodan opened up to the American, the non-Japanese speaking members. And it was a remarkable experience. Thank you very much, Kodan and Reverend and Mrs. Inose, for that. And the presentation of the divine principle that was given by Reverend Nakamura was a perspective on DP that I never heard before. And he called it the victory of true parents and the value of the blessing. That was what he called the divine principle. And he made it very clear that what Heavenly Parent wanted was that Adam and Eve would become the temples, that God would be able to reside in Adam and Eve, and then Adam and Eve would be able to bless their children and bless their grandchildren, and that would be a lineage that was connected directly to God. But what happened, of course, is that Adam and Eve did not make that connection, and so instead of being able to bless their children and raise them up as God would have wants to raise them up, the lineage was taken. So what Reverend Nakamura made very clear is that the blessing is the sacrament through which God's people these children can be restored back to God's lineage. And that's the purpose of history. That's the purpose of the coming of the Messiah, to restore God's lineage, which he has never had until this time. So that's one thing. I realized that about the blessing. And then last week, the sermon was building a blessed nation. And so that started me thinking. We are going out, and Omanim really wants us to bless a lot of people in America. But it's not only enough to just give them the blessing, but we have to explain to them what a blessed marriage actually is and why it's important. And once they can model that marriage, then we'll be able to make an impact on society. So then I began to really think, what do we have? What can we offer these people after we give them the holy wine in the parking lot? Then we have to explain, they're inspired, maybe they had a dream about us, but then they need to know what to do next now. And that's where this idea came in. There's two things I wanted to share this morning about what we can give to these people to help them make their blessing, build their blessing into what it's really supposed to be. By the way, this painting is a beautiful painting about the blessing and about Heavenly Parent and the blessing, and it's by Benny Anderson. Thank you, Benny. Now, I want to start with this idea from the Divine Principle. The Divine Principle says on page 39, God's love is manifested through the various loves of the three object partners. So the four-position foundation is where we can receive and enjoy the fullness of God's love. What that means is that God's love is most powerfully meant to be experienced by us, not only in nature, not only in the beautiful things that are around us, but God's presence and God's love and God's devotion to us originally was supposed to be expressed through the members of our own immediate family. So what Divine Principle is saying is that when the grandparents' love comes to the children and the grandchildren, that's one of God's true love coming through the grandparents. When the parents love the children and love their grandparents, that's God's love getting to the individuals in that family. When siblings love one another, that's actually God's love through the siblings loving one another. When children love their parents and their grandparents, that's actually God's love coming through those individuals to their blood kin. There's no closer closer way that God can get to us than through our own family. That was the original ideal. If Adam and Eve had really been able to do that, become one with God, temples of God, feels God's heart as their own, and then raise their children that way, and then they would have become grandparents, and their children would have raised their children that way, and so on, then that's how God's love would be coming into the lives of each person in the family. Can you understand that ideal? That's why it says here, grandparents. If you just a quick aside, if you go to Chunsangyang, the third book, True Love, you'll see that there are realms of true love. And how many are there? There are 5. Love among brothers and sisters, children's love, the love of husband and wife, parents' love, grandparents' love. Those are the realms of love. But what I wanted to talk about today is just one realm, because we're talking about, I want to talk about the blessing. Unification thought shares that in order to make a blessing rich and the way God wanted it to be, there's a character to develop. There are virtues that express love and that are the expression of God's love. The first kind of virtue is called moral virtue. And moral virtue has to do with, this is what unification thought says. Morality is the norm of human behavior for an individual's inner life. What goes on inside me, not outside, but inside. Therefore, morality is the norm for the perfection of the first blessing, my relationship with God, my individual inner experience. So ethics is an objective norm. Ethics means a relationship with other people, but morality is the subjective norm, the relationship between my conscience and my heart and God. So it gives moral virtues. There are a number of these named in unification thought, and I want you to look at these. Honestly, each one of these virtues, we could probably give a 2-hour class on every single one, And if we looked at the Chinese characters, we'd be able to see more clearly what they are. But anyway, this is what a person should strive for to bring into their blessing, their moral virtue. And the virtues are listed as purity, honesty, righteousness, temperance. Temperance is like moderation, not too extreme. Courage, everybody knows what that is. Wisdom, self-control, endurance, independence, self-help, fairness, diligence. Diligence means you're very responsible in doing what you're supposed to do. Innocence, self-reliance, dignity, integrity. These are the virtues that a person models as they are, or practices as they are trying to approach the first blessing. So I think sometimes that there are, heroes in movies. And some of these heroes in movies are very, very popular. And the 2 people that I think of, one fella, the guy that I think of that's very popular is Captain America. Like he's like an old-fashioned guy, right? His virtues and his values are very family and nation and very traditional. He's a pure guy, relatively speaking, And he's an honest guy, he's a courageous guy, he's an enduring guy, he's a diligent guy. He's even innocent in a way, He's not he doesn't hit on people. You know what I'm saying? He's an innocent guy, and that's why people find him attractive. Even in Superman. Superman is attractive because he doesn't hit on people. He has an innocence. You know what I'm saying? So, hello? Okay, all right. So these virtues are really, really beautiful. And the woman that there are the women, of course, in Lord of the Rings who are enormously virtuous. They're courageous, they're wise, they're strong, they're virtuous, they're innocent even. honestly, in that movie. I recently saw a movie that people like a lot, Wonder Woman, and I saw that and I thought, yeah, I can see some of these virtues in her too. That's why I think she's admirable. Right? So anyway, the point is that moral virtues are what we bring in. We should bring into a marriage to make that marriage a strong. It depends upon each person is a pillar in that marriage. So this, if we aim to do these things, to become these things, then it really helps us, and then we can engage in the horizontal relationships. And the virtues that unification thought names are fidelity, reconciliation, tolerance, obligation, courtesy, cooperation, service, sympathy, justice, sincerity, helpfulness, understanding. Once again, at least 2 hours on every single one of these. But I'll just give you a couple of examples. I was told, or many of you know maybe, that Father's favorite Chinese character was the character for sincerity. And the Chinese character is made up of two parts, the word and to become. So what mattered to Father was not, Father, I love you and I promise. Father, he doesn't want to hear the words. He wants you to become the word. He wants us to become what he says, right? That's what matters to heaven. Not what we speak, but how we live and how we are and what we do. So that's one expression of love. So when you are sincere to somebody, then that's an expression of not only that you love them, or that the husband loves the wife, or the wife loves the husband, but God's love comes through that person, through the spouse to the other one. Courtesy is an expression of a beautiful virtue. I like to. Once I realized that courtesy is important, an expression of God's love, it became very important to me. Like when we go to a restaurant, my wife and I like to run up to her, take her bag, take her coat, pull out the chair, and then put the chair in. A little act of courtesy. But you know what that does? It makes her feel like a queen. It makes her feel like a queen. And you know what that does? It tells her that I am loved. I am loved. So I remember when I was matched by Father, he gave me a photo of my wife, and when I took the photo, you know, many of you have heard this before. I took the photo, and I didn't break eye contact with Father, and I wanted him to see that it's not really important to me what she looks like, because I wanted him to understand that. And what I felt from him looking at me was, I love this girl, and God loves this girl more than she knows, and we need you to help her understand that. So I took the photo, and I felt that, and I didn't, I didn't look. I kept looking at him, and in my heart and in my soul, I projected the answer to him, and I said, Heavenly, if there's nothing else I can do in my life, in this church, in this one thing, I swear to you, it's done. It's not I will do it, it's done. I told him, you make that kind of promise to Father, it's like, but I felt it so strong, if there's nothing else I can do, you want her to know she's loved by you and by God, I'll take care of it. It's done. And then I took the photo. So I always have this feeling very strong feeling that I am one of the main avenues of God's love into my spouse's life. One of the main ones. I will become we are empty nesters. So the love, it's basically she and I, who are with each other, and then for her to know that she's loved, I am a major conduit of God's love. Can you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So another virtue that is really important is the virtue, well, there's the courtesy, obligation. That sounds really funny. I'm obliged. No, it's like I have duties towards you, and I own those duties to you because I want to show you how much I care for you. I own those duties. I want to be responsible. I want to take care of you. I want it from here. And then when the spouse can feel that, that's how God's love can come into that person's life. Can you understand?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Hello? Reconciliation is a big one. Some Father calls them heated arguments. Some couples, I think, have heated arguments every once in a while. I know that the Burns don't, but everybody else does. Pretty much. So like, here's a little thing. My wife and I, we don't like the way each other drives, right? So when we have to do something and she's driving the car, or we go together, I don't drive because I know she's going to backseat drive, and I don't like that. So when we're going to go someplace, I take the passenger seat, and she'll be here, and then she'll do something that just like, don't do that, and then I'll say something, and she'll say something, and it's basically like, look, I'm driving, so shut up, I mean, she doesn't say that, but that's what you get the clear message, right? And then it's like, but then I remember, I am one of the main channels of God's love in her life, and if I cut her off, that door is closed, and she doesn't feel God's love. Right? So even though I'm a little bit upset, then I just, it's a habitual. I reach over and I touch her, and just like that. And we don't say anything, and we're both looking at the road, but I shut my mouth, and she knows. But by that hand, by that hand on her, she knows that, okay, he's upset, but he still loves me. Can you understand? Just all the little things like that. There's so many things you can find. Reconciliation is an expression of God's love. That's what it is. That's why it's so important. Fidelity means faith. To be faithful to somebody is when someone is true to you, regardless of anything, what anybody says. When that person is true to you, their heart is true, then you feel their sincerity and their love, and your heart is drawn to that person when they express fidelity. Right? Fidelity, faithfulness. So those are horizontal virtues. Now. Like I said, we could go on for quite a bit. I won't. But these horizontal virtues are not something that you pull out of the bag when you finally move in with somebody. But these horizontal virtues, Father says, loving one another as brothers and sisters sets up the foundation for conjugal love. The foundation for conjugal love. This pathway, and so on and so on. So, fidelity, reconciliation, tolerance, obligation, courtesy, modesty, compassion, sincerity are not things that you suddenly just do once you become blessed. These are things that you practice horizontally with your brothers and sisters all through childhood. So if a person is actually practicing with their brother, with their sister, how to be faithful, how to get over an argument, how to reconcile, how to be tolerant of someone's imperfection, how to not feel the weight of obligation, but rather to feel that I want to do this for you. I want to fulfill my duty to you. I want to be courteous to you because I think you're really special. If a person is practicing that all throughout their growth period as brothers and sisters, they're really going to have a really special character by the time, 14 years, from the age of 7 to 14, from 14 to 21. If they're practicing these virtues, intentionally, they're really going to have a fine character. Do you understand what I mean? So those of you who are getting ready to be matched, please look at this and think about it. And those of you who are in the matching already or in the blessing already, beginning at the blessing, please remember these virtues. In my experience, this is actually what true love looks like. true love is felt when your spouse is faithful, wants to reconcile. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is how love is expressed. That's why these things are important. Now, the final thing I'll say is that these virtues, these actually are very related to the two foundations that we know of divine principle, the foundation of faith and the foundation of substance. But look at it. It says on page 179, for Adam to realize the purpose of creation, he was supposed to fulfill two conditions. Not to pay for failure, not to punish himself because of sin, but rather to fulfill the purpose of creation. Even before the fall, he was supposed to do the foundation of faith and substance. And this is of course in page 179, DP. It says, for Adam to realize the purpose of creation, he was supposed to fulfill two conditions. First, Adam should have established the foundation of faith. The person to fulfill this foundation was Adam himself. The condition to establish this foundation was to keep strictly to God's commandment not to eat. And in fulfilling this condition, he would have passed through a time period, which we know from the foundation of substance. And then it says, the second condition which Adam was supposed to fulfill in order to realize the purpose of creation was to establish the foundation of substance. Upon an unshakable foundation of faith, Adam was then to become one with God, and so on and so on. So I was thinking, in order to fulfill, so these two foundations are not something to pull out whenever we screw up, and we have to punish ourselves for our sin or for somebody else's sin or a national failure or something. That's what they are, yes, in the age of restoration. But in the garden, before there was a fall, there was an original way to do this. Each person, Adam was to be a central person. Whatever he did or she did, Eve, was a time period. And the offering was not only don't eat the commandment, but do many things, do creative things, do things that I gifted you, that I gave you talent to do, that you enjoy doing. Do those things and offer those things to me. And that would have been a really pleasing offering for God. That's something they could have practiced daily all their life, not punishing themselves. Can you understand what I'm saying? Yes. Right? So just think about it. When one of your relatives, a child or your sibling goes to a track meet and does really well, or your little child goes to a school play and does really, really well, and you see them, they're clapping, and the audience is clapping, and they're smiling, and they look at you, and their heart is, Mommy and Daddy, look what I did, Mommy and Daddy. Do the parents feel like, you're not suffering, you're not bowing, you're not taking a cold shower, you're not fasting, that's unacceptable, I don't like that offering? Do they? Come on, right? Of course they don't do that. When the child makes that kind of offering, the parents are so happy. The siblings are happy. The friends are happy. The aunts and uncles, the cousins, everybody's happy. That's the kind of offering that Adam and Eve should have been making in their growth period as they were growing. Can you understand? Learning how to bring God not just into the things I don't do, but into the things they do. And when they can bring God into the things that they love and they're gifted in, what happens, they say, Dad, Mom, look at what I did. Look at what I did. Thanks for teaching me. Thanks for getting me the bike or, something. Then the parents say, boy, this kid, they take what I give them and they think of me right away and they thank me right away. I want to give them even more, right? That's how parents feel about the child who always thinks about them and honors them. They want to bless them more and more and more. And the more the child expresses gratitude, what happens is this faith becomes really strong. I trust my son. I trust my daughter. I trust my dad. I trust my mom. And this faith becomes really like a solid bond, right? The other thing that was supposed to happen is the foundation of substance. Oh, okay. I talked about that. Foundation. The second condition which Adam was supposed to fulfill to realize the purpose of creation was to establish the foundation of substance. Now we have 4 fallen natures. But what are those 4 fallen natures? They are the corruption of the 4 original natures. And those original natures are mentioned a number of times in the principle of creation. And what they are basically is to see from God's viewpoint. Adam and Eve should have been practicing especially from 7 to 14 and from 14 to 21, to see the animals and to see the creation and to see each other and the angels from God's viewpoint. Then they should understand their position in the family and in the community, and then also respect the dominion of love of those above them and have a loving dominion over those younger than them, and they could have multiplied goodness. They should have been practicing that for, maybe not so much 0 to 7, but definitely from 7 to 14, from 14 to 21, practicing, seeing God's viewpoint, understanding my position and my responsibilities in my community, having dominion, a loving dominion, and multiplying goodness. What happens to a young person if for 14 straight years they're intentionally, deliberately, daily practicing and polishing their original natures? What kind of person do you get after 14 years of that kind of effort? Shining. Kind of shining. Blinding shining, Who are your parents? I want to talk to them, So that's what those are the kind of things so young people, like I said, if you're into your blessing or if you're preparing, live intentionally. You're not going to become magic and virtuous just on the day of when you move in together. These are things that you need to practice all throughout your growth period. And people my age, then definitely, we should. These are things that we have to do in order to build our blessing. So last week's sermon was building a blessed nation. And how do we do that? By building a blessing, showing people what it needs to look like. Our country needs this. Our world needs this. Let's do this. The place where Adam and Eve become perfectly one in heart and body, as husband and wife, is also the place where God and human beings become united. This is the center of goodness where the purpose of creation is fulfilled. This is the place where the Word of God is incarnated and brought to fulfillment. Here, God, our parent, draws near and abides within his perfected children and rests peacefully for eternity. Please, build your blessing. Build your foundation for your blessing. Thank you.